Hello everyone. Welcome to Recovery Manager Plus online workshop series. As always, we're delighted to have you on board. So thank you for joining us today. This is the second episode of the 3-day workshop series. Last week we took up the Active Directory backup and recovery tool of the Recovery Manager Plus and discussed the following topics. We went over how to configure an Active Directory domain with Recovery Manager Plus, how to configure backups, how to handle version management and change tracking. We also went over how to perform revert, restore, rollback, recycle operations, and so on. This week, we will be taking up the bare metal backup and recovery module and discussing how to configure full and incremental backups for domain controllers, how to create a bootable recovery media with Windows Assessment and Deployment Kit. We will also see how to perform an authoritative and non-authoritative restore. Let me introduce myself. I am Eben Joes, and I'm a member of the tech team here at AD Solutions. Without further ado, let's get started. The scope of accidental deletions or modifications can be as small as a single object or as big as an entire domain controller. Your entire server could crash. While the AD backup and recovery module, which we discussed last week, allowed you to recover individual objects, it still wouldn't shield you from a complete domain controller crash. So we took it one notch up and brought in bare metal recovery for domain controllers. BMR or bare metal recovery module basically can rebuild a system from scratch, even if the entire operating system has been corrupted. So if you have plans to upgrade your operating system or any other system software and are being held back by the so-called risks, then BMR is exactly what you need. Get a backup of your domain controller, do whatever you want with your domain controller, and if something goes wrong, we can take you back in time, figuratively. BMR has also been very effective in migrating physical domain controllers to a virtual machine. So if you have plans on duplicating your environment for testing, or if you actually want to virtualize your environment, BMR can come in pretty handy. Let's go to a demo installation now. Last week, we saw how to add a domain to Recovery Manager Plus using the Add Domain link here and providing the required credentials. The bare metal backup and recovery module is tightly coupled with the Active Directory backup and recovery module. The domains we add here would automatically be visible to the bare metal module as well. To use the BMR utility, go over to the Active Directory tab here and then switch to bare metal. You can see that BMR automatically detects all the domain controllers in the detected domains. BMR allows you to run periodic full and incremental backups separately for each domain controller. I'm going to switch over to restore.com, capital.com here. So this is the domain controller that has been detected for capital.com. BMR provides you an automated backup job that will run for each domain controller you have selected. To select the domain controller for backup, check this box here and click on Configure for Backup. Now you can see that a window has popped up which allows you to modify the frequency at which full and incremental backups would run. Typically, it is considered a good practice to fully back up your domain controller every month and incrementally backup changes on a daily basis. This will reduce the amount of data you will lose from the time when something went wrong. For now, I am just going to leave them at their default values. Recovery Manager Plus gives you the flexibility to specify the number of full backups to be retained as well. This is basically what retention is. It specifies the total number of full backups that BMR will retain at any point in time. So if you have set your retention to 2, BMR will retain up to 2 full backups and their corresponding incremental backups taken by this schedule. So when the third full backup is completed, your first full backup and its corresponding incremental backups will be deleted. This will help in preserving storage in your repository. On clicking Configure button here, BMR deploys an agent in the selected DCs and starts a service called the Bare Metal Recovery Service. I'm going to switch over to my DC. and see if the recovery service has been started. You can see that the bare metal recovery service has been started here. Switching back to the product now. BMR works with a single repository at any point in time. Before you start your backups, if you'd like to change the backup repository, you can click on the Backup Storage button here and provide the required credentials. I have already configured the repository here. You can see that there is a bunch of controls here. Let's go ahead and explore them. The Edit button here allows you to change the frequency at which full and incremental backups run. You can also change the retention from this console. Click on Save when you're done. The Enable and the Disable button here allows you to choose whether this schedule will automatically be triggered. Disabling this schedule using this button here will prevent it from automatically being triggered. This Quick Backup button here will trigger an instant backup, an instant full backup for this domain controller for this domain, regardless of the frequency at which the schedule is set to run. I'm going to switch over to restore.com for a moment. A quick history of all the operations that have been performed for this domain controller under this schedule can be seen by clicking on the link here. You can see that I performed a full backup at 2145 and then I performed an incremental backup at 2300. A more elaborate view of this set of operations that have been performed on the domain can be seen by going over to the backup summary page. Here you can see the number of domains, DCs that have been configured with bare metal module. You can also see the number of full backups and the incremental backups that I have taken. Clicking on this link here will show you all the volumes that have been backed up for each instance of the backup. So you can see that I have taken a full backup here and I've taken an incremental backup here. You can see the amount of space each backup requires in the repository and the amount of time it took to back up these pages. Let's go over to the Restore tab now. In BMR, we have assumed that the worst has happened. Your DC is no more and you don't even have an operating system to boot up your DC. But that's not going to be a problem because we are going to create a bootable recovery media. This recovery media will act as a minimal boot device that will allow you to load up your backups from the repository and then proceed with the restore. In order to create the recovery media, you have to download the Windows Assessment and Deployment Kit, which you can get from this link here. I have already downloaded my Windows Assessment and Deployment Kit. So let's go ahead and create the bootable recovery media now. Specify the path of the ADK Windows Assessment and Deployment Kit here. So this is where I have downloaded my ADK. I'm going to copy this path. I'm going to paste it here. Click Next when you're done. Now creating this recovery media is a one-time operation for each processor architecture. So once you've created a recovery media, you can use the same bootable recovery media for any domain and any DC. The only restriction is the processor architecture. I'm going to type in 64 because that is what my processor architecture is. Click Next when you're done. Clicking on this Create button will start creating the bootable recovery media. I'm going to switch over to another installation where I've already created the bootable recovery media. So this is how the Restore tab would look like if you have already created at least one bootable recovery media. You can see that BMR already lists out the location of the bootable recovery media which I had already created. This is where it is. It is an ISO file. Now you can go ahead and select the domain controller that you want to restore and the restore point to which you want to restore the DC to. On selecting each backup point, BMR automatically populates the location of the backup files for that particular backup. So if you're going to restore to a full backup point, just select that backup point and BMR will automatically populate the backup file location for that particular backup. Now that is for a full backup. However, if you're going to perform a restore to an incremental backup point, then you're required to perform a merge of the incremental backups before that point up to its full backup. So if you want to restore to this incremental point, we need a merge of the backup files from this incremental backup and this incremental backup. And it might have sounded a little bit tricky, but that's nothing of the sort. BMR will automatically provide you a merge and supply you the location of the merge if you just select the incremental backup point, like so. Click yes. What exactly is happening now is BMR is creating the merge of the incremental backup files. So basically, if you want to restore to this incremental backup point, we need to perform a restore to this full backup point and then perform a restore from the merge of this, and this incremental backup points. So we are creating a merge of these three backup points into a single folder. So first we are going to restore to this full backup point and then this merge point. So you can see that the merge has been completed and BMR is giving you the location of the merge. So this is the location of the full backup files and this is the merge files. Once we have these locations, we can go to our DC that is crashed. So this is my crashed DC. So what I need to do now is to mount the bootable recovery media. So this is my bootable recovery media. I'm going to mount that and I'm going to fire it up. And we have to wait for a couple of minutes till the restore wizard appears. If this was a physical machine, you might have to write the bootable recovery media to a device and then boot up your crashed DC from that device. You can see that the restore wizard is powering up. There it is. It's coming online now. Yeah, the bare metal restoration wizard is here. Click on next. Provide the backup location here. So this is the full backup location, which you can see here on the screen. I'm going to provide the credentials to the repository. Click on next when you're done. So now BMR restoration wizard is telling you that it is going to overwrite all the data in that crash DC. As soon as you click next after selecting yes, the restoration process will start. So this is going to take a lot of time. Let's switch over to the presentation where I've got screenshots of each of these. So we were in the screen, we provided the full backup location. Click next and the restoration process would have started. Once the restoration process is completed, bare metal recovery module will ask you if you want to go on with an incremental backup. So that is a restore to an incremental backup point. So if you choose to, you can select yes and then provide the location of the merge folder, which you had already seen in the UI. Here you will be providing the location of the merge folder. This is for incremental backup. Once that is completed, this is the finished screen you would get. At this point of time, basically your domain controller has been fully restored to the selected backup point. From this point on, your restore operation can take on one of the two routes. You can force this to be an authoritative restore or a non-authoritative restore. The difference being, in a non-authoritative restore, as and when your domain controller comes online, data from the other domain controllers in your domain will be replicated to the restored domain controller. In an authoritative restore, the data is replicated from the restored domain controllers to the other domain controllers. Now, if you want this to be a non-authoritative restore, then just let the domain controller reboot normally, and when it comes back online, we will force a replication from the other domain controllers to the restored domain controller. If we want this to be an authoritative restore, then reboot the domain controller, and then we have some work to do. For an authoritative restore, as soon as the reboot is on, we have to press F8 key after the BIOS post screen. And then you will be provided with a menu like so. From this menu, select the Directory Services Repair mode, also called the DSRM mode, and provide the DSRM credentials. For me, it is /administrator and my password. Once you've given the password and the required username and you're logged in, open up an admin command prompt and type in the command ntdsutil followed by activate instance ntds. Following this command, you have to give in the command restore followed by the argument which will specify the entity that you want to restore. You can specify a single Active Directory object or an entire subtree of the domain. For me, I had to restore the entire domain, so for me it was restore subtree dz is equal to authoritative, dz is equal to com. Once you've done that, click on yes to perform the authoritative restore. And there you can see that authoritative restore has been completed successfully. Regardless of the type of the restore, as soon as the domain controller comes online, a replication will be forced either to this domain controller or from this domain controller, depending on the type of the restore. This ensures the integrity of the data that has been restored. So that's basically BMR, everyone. Next Tuesday, we will meet at the same time and we will be taking up the virtual environment backup and recovery module. Do hit us with your feedback over mail. Thank you all for joining today's session. I will be pausing the video feed now, but I will continue to answer your questions. Thank you. Have a great day.